Hi, Claire. Thanks for agreeing to talk to my group today about what you do with creative financing. We met kind of a fluke because we really weren't supposed to meet. So I know we met for a reason because
Yeah.
the property you contacted me on didn't meet any of your buy boxes. And then you invited me down to your office where you show people how to find buyers that are willing to do creative financing, such as owner financing. So I wanted you to come and talk to our group about that because it's something that, in this day and age, we all need to have a lot of things in our tool belt. So it's just another tool. So go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I am so excited to always talk about creative financing because I think it's just another, like you said, it's another tool in the tool belt. I started real estate investing 7 years ago. And I started when
I have a Zoom call.
20, I started when I was 25 years old.
They can't.
Sorry. I started when I was 20. No problem. I started when I was 25 years old. I started with a mobile home and did a lot of fix and flips. But then I realized like I still was in the fix and flip game and just still working a job, really. I mean, that's really what it is. But, when you start doing investing, you don't really show income to a mortgage lender. Like it's not my income. Do I have 2 years of tax returns? Absolutely. But a lot of the time it doesn't look good to the mortgage lender. So I had to kind of get creative because I already quit my job. I already kind of went all in. I sold my car for $8,500. I was like, I'm in. And I know you can do this with no money, no credit. So how do you do it? And that's kind of where subject to really came into play for me. I have purchased a lot of property with subject to, and I'll kind of go through what subject to is in this. I want to go through what subject to is. I want to kind of go owner financing. I want to just tell you guys kind of what we do because it's really something that I want more agents to get on board with. And I've kind of been getting stopped a lot with the agents because they just don't understand it. And a lot of the time when you don't understand something, you just quit. And you're just like, no, it's not legal, it's not legitimate, but it's 100% legitimate. So I've been doing fix and flip. I kind of had a fix and flip that went south on me. And I was like, I'm never doing a fix and flip again. I'm never doing contractors again. I hate it. It's like the worst thing ever. I have a property now that someone the contractor cut my gas line. I spent almost $2,000 trying to fix this gas line. And I was like, I'm never doing another crazy flip again. If it's like paint carpet, I can handle, but like a crazy fix and flip, I don't see myself doing that because creative financing is way easier. It's just, if you understand it, it's a low entry fee typically when you negotiate it. And with the interest rates that happened in the last 2 years, it's just an amazing strategy. So what subject to is, for those of you guys who don't know, it's actually a strategy where subject to means subject to the existing mortgage on the property. So the property stays in the seller's name, the owner, and then you take over the mortgage subject to the payments on it. Because the interest rates were so low in the last 2 years, we're seeing interest rates at 2, 3, 4%. I just got an interest rate for like 5.1, which is a little high, but it's still lower than what we're getting now with the interest rates. And then we still go through a title escrow process. We actually like the agent to call, or the seller to call the title escrow so they can kind of walk them through the process of a subject to, because a lot of the time people are just really nervous about it. Because the biggest question that I get is, what happens when the person stops making the payment? You're trusting that person that they're going to make the payment. Right? So because the buyer, my LLC, will go on title. I own the property, but the seller still has their name on the mortgage. Essentially, it's not an assumption. That's an assumption, and it's subject to. They're not interchangeable at all. they are subject to it. You don't qualify for that mortgage. An assumption, I have to go now to the lender and go qualify with a credit score, income, and all that stuff. So it's not, a lot of people interchange it. It's not interchangeable. It's subject to is way different than assumption.
It
And
does
I don't,
sound the same though.
I'm sorry?
It does kind of sound the same, but
Yeah, people think it's similar. Yeah, people think it's similar, but it's not similar. They're completely separate. That's a separate, because now I have to go qualify with that lender. If it's Chase Bank, I have to go qualify with Chase Bank. The name gets switched over into my name instead of the seller. So it's completely separate. When we write the contract, we write an addendum to the contract. I think you've seen my addendum to the contract. We do it with the TREC 1-4 contract, and then we write an addendum on it stating exactly what's going to happen. So in the addendum, there's something called a performance deed. So if I fail to perform, the property automatically gets deeded back to the property. I mean, to the original owner. So you're like, okay, how does that happen? We use a third-party servicing loan company, where this third party will take an automatic payment out of my account every single month, and then there's an email that gets sent to the seller stating that I paid the mortgage payment. So it's kind of a peace of mind. The moment that I do not pay the mortgage payment, it gets there's a time frame on it, but it gets deeded back to the seller. Now, you also have to look at it from my point of view too, as well, because I don't want the property deeded back to me, deeded back to the seller, right? I'm getting cash flow. I spent probably $30,000-$40,000 getting into the property. There's not really a reason why I want to get it deeded back. That we don't get into business to have it deeded back to the seller. So how do we buy these properties? How do we talk to the agents? We actually go and we try to educate the agents on it. Really, we come from a lot of agents. I get upfront, no, just like, that's fine. That's part of the business, right? I just get a no. My sellers don't want to do it. The thing that I'm running into recently is that they're saying I talked to my sellers when I know that they didn't talk to their sellers. Or the other thing I get is, yes, I talked to my sellers, but they kind of talked it out. They talked themselves out of doing a subject to, if that makes sense. So like they talk to the sellers, but the agent says, oh no, I wouldn't take this deal if I were you, type of thing. They kind of talk the sellers out of it instead of really educating them on how it works. That's why I love talking to agents, because people we call them unicorn agents. So there's more than one tool in the tool belt in order for them, because a lot of agents, they just buy and sell real estate. That's what they do. They get a commission and off they go. But if you really want to do investing, there's other different strategies. And if you're open to it, then we want to make sure that we can help the agent understand it, so then they can go to their seller and talk to them. The other thing I would say is that we do pay out the agent. So typically our ideal buy box is a low equity deal. We like something that we pay out the agent their 3%, but the seller can't bring the money to the table to be able to pay out the agent, because they're either underwater potentially, or they just don't have that equity there to pay out the agent. And we try to give the seller something to walk away with, depending on how much the equity is. Some sellers are like, hey, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with this because I have to move. And I had one VA lady recently, she got orders to move somewhere else very quickly. It's fast, right? So she had to be out of there by August 1st. And so if she paid another payment, it would have really hurt her. She wouldn't be able to keep affording that mortgage payment. But here's the scenario. In that particular scenario, she didn't have enough equity. Nobody was biting at the price that she wanted in order to pay all of the cost of everything. So because they couldn't pay all the cost of everything, she couldn't sell the property. So we come in with a creative offer. She gets $6,000. The agent gets $6,000. We pay the closing costs. We pay everything. It's almost like a $35,000, $40,000 entry fee. Now, why do we do such a high? To us, if I go get a mortgage, I have to put 20% down every single time because it's an investment property. So now I'm going and I'm putting a little down, getting a great interest rate, and being able to rent it out and have cash flow on top of that. So I hope have I lost anybody so far? Any questions?
I understand it. Does anybody have any questions?
No, this is really good, and breaking it down and really getting a good understanding of how it can be beneficial.
So
no questions yet.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because it's both the seller and everybody wins in this scenario. But the risk is obviously the seller staying on the mortgage. But you find a credible buyer that makes sure that that doesn't happen. You don't want, obviously, something to happen with the property. We don't plan on deeding the property back over. That's never the plan. So that's kind of seller finance. I mean, subject to. Subject to is where it's there's a mortgage on the property. Seller finance, I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with seller finance, with where the property is owned free and clear. And right now with owner financing, what I'm kind of getting this pushback a little bit from the agents, is because we mainly go direct to agent. That's really our business model. Some of the time we go direct to seller. We're starting to go direct to seller, but our biggest thing is to build a relationship with the agents. So when we do owner finance, we're getting pushback on the down payment, which they want 20% down. I'm like, I can go get a mortgage for 20% down, so that's not attractive to me. But then on top of that, they want market interest rate. I'm like, that's not the reason why you do owner finance. People think that the reason why you do owner financing is because you can't qualify for a mortgage. Well, that's not necessarily the case in our situation. It's just that we want a lower lower interest rate in order for us to be able to cash flow on it. That's really the name of the game. Cash flow for us is everything. We want to make a return on our money. If I can put $20,000 in and make $500, $600, $700 a month, I would do it all day. Right? And then you get a strategy called velocity banking. And I'm going to open up a can of worms right now if I talk about velocity banking, because that is just a whole nother strategy for a different day. Because velocity banking, where you can use lines of credit to be able to chunk away your mortgage faster. And a lot of people forget that owning free and clear assets is really the way to go. Now, for me, that's what I like. I know a lot of investors, they'll raise a lot of money, which I'm not opposed to raising money, but I think there's a balance, right? But how do you get lines of credit to pay off your mortgage faster? So now, okay, you have 10 just single family houses, and maybe you're making $1,500 a month, but now that $1,500 is free and clear. So 15 times 10, that's a good chunk of money. And I didn't have to go get 100 units usually. Like I don't have to answer to nobody in that scenario. Nobody. I don't have to answer to the bank. The only thing I have to pay is taxes every single year, but it's free and clear. And I think a lot of people forget that paying off a mortgage is really where it's at. And what is the root word of mortgage?
Yeah.
Pay until you die.
Yeah.
Mortgage. Why do you think it's a 30-year term? And I'm not trying to, a lot of people don't understand. If you go and work a job for 40 years, what's your biggest bill every single month? It's your mortgage payment. What if you could eliminate that in 5 to 7 years? That's what my boyfriend teaches. So that's a whole nother subject for a different day, that he does that. That's his side of the business. But really that's that's what I believe. I believe, okay, so if I get a subject to property and I can pay it off in 5 to 7 years, to me, that's a win-win scenario for everybody. So that's kind of my strategy doing investing. I've been doing this for a while. I know I had a wholesaler recently come to me and say, oh, I want to start doing fix and flip because that's the next level, right? And I'm like, stay away from it. I'm like, you will make more money in wholesaling right now, especially where the market is. The market in fix and flip, you're going to take a 20 to 25% haircut right off the top because the interest rates are so high and people don't have buying power right now. So recently, just in the last 2 weeks, when I talked to the agents, they're a little bit more open to a creative financing strategy because their property is sitting in the market and people still need to move. They still need to do, you know, they still need to, you know, they're still gonna buy and sell properties, but this is a different way to kind of do it. So so that was subject to owner financing, and then there's something called a wrap, which I don't want to go into too much detail about a wrap because I'm from California. I moved here 3 years ago, and it is 100% illegal to do wraps. However, they love them here, and I love that you can make cash flow off of basically becoming the bank, and I don't own the property, right? That's the ultimate goal, is to become the lender, to become the bank, right? How do you lend out the money? So how do you take your free and clear assets, get a first position HELOC off of them, and now you're able to go lend out money to other people? So there's phases to all of this. That's my ultimate goal, obviously, is to be able to lend money. We're actually in the process of doing a lot of that now, but the goal is, if you understand how interest works, right? You understand how you will, the people who don't understand interest are the people who pay it, and the people who understand interest are the people who receive the interest. Where do banks make the majority of their money? Is interest. It's interest fees that they collect. I was reading something the other day. They said you know how you overcharge your account, like it's underwater, like $20, and then it charges you a 30 fee, overdraft fee. You know that's $1 billion business, billion with a B. So people who didn't have money now can't afford to pay that $30 fee, and the banks still take it on top of that. Isn't that crazy? So when I talk about creative financing, it's kind of a taboo thing, only because, you know, people are so used to the traditional way. The other thing I would say about subject to properties, now that I'm like thinking about it a little bit, is who wins in that transaction with the subject to. If I were to go out and get a mortgage, who wins in that scenario? The only person that wins is the mortgage company, because the mortgage company then has to put another mortgage on it, and you pay points whether you like it or not. You pay all these fees on top of it. So every single time we transfer a mortgage to a new property, it's almost like, I think it's like 3 or 4%. But to transfer an entire property through closing costs, agents, all that, it's 11% every single time you transfer a property. 11% between your closing costs, your real estate agent fees, your mortgage. It's a complete, who wins? Everybody else wins in that scenario. Everybody else. And then I don't know
company, the mortgage people, yeah.
The insurance people that get paid out, all of them, every last one of them. You're paying so much money when you transfer a property. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen an amortization schedule on a mortgage. And you guys know that it's front end loaded with interest, right? So when you go and pay your first payment and you're like, hey, my principal isn't going down at all. What's going on? Why? Because 80 to 90% of that first payment for the first 5 to 7 years is what? It's interest that you pay the bank. So by the time that $300,000 property comes around, what happens? In 30 years, you've paid double it's a $600,000 property, really, at the end of the day. It's probably even more with all the fees.
Mhm.
So, and then at the very tail, but what do people do in 5 to 7 years typically? Because they need money. They refinance. What happens with a refinance? A refinance starts the whole process over. Starts it all over again. So you took out 20, 30, even 100,000, which I don't think they'll probably do 100,000, but you took out $50,000, but you're paying for it. You pay for it. People are like, oh, well, I needed the money. I'm like, yeah, but you just put yourself in a huge personal loan debt, essentially.
Mhm.
And this velocity banking, it also works on student loans. It has everything it has everything to do with debt. They used to call it sweep strategies, which was sweeping away your debt, essentially. How do you pay less? Most Americans, there was an article that came out 2 days ago that we hit a $1 trillion of personal debt for all America across the board. $1 trillion. That means most Americans are $20,000 in debt, personal debt. I'm not talking about asset debt. Asset debt, I'm probably like, I'm up there on the asset debt, but that asset makes me money, right? Personal debt is different. Personal, when you go out and you go into the Gucci store or Louis Vuitton store, that's personal debt, right? Because that stuff does not make you money. I always look at the things that I buy and I'm like, okay, is that making me money? Is it growing my business? And if it's not, then it doesn't make sense to purchase it. Now, there's obviously the little things that you need, but I really, really, truly look at all my expenses to make sure that I'm still kind of making sure that I'm not purchasing crazy things, because I want all that money going back into my business. Every single time it can go back into my business, it grows it, right? That's kind of where I'm at. So, do you guys have any questions? I kind of, at the last tail end of that, I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent. I'm sorry. I'm really passionate about a lot of the things that I do because I just see it on a day-to-day basis.
This is Aisha. I have a question. Did you guys ever acquire any properties that doesn't have any equity in it?
That doesn't have equity?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we like those ones.
So typically it works the same as this, as a subject to, or,
Subject to, we like low equity deals.
okay,
As long as, well, let me put it this way. We like low equity with a good interest rate. If it's a high interest rate, we won't touch it. But if it's like a 3, 4, 5% interest rate and it cash flows for us, we like the low equity deals. We will take them all day long. I think subject to is going to take the place of short sales, to be honest with you. Especially in the last 2 years.
We can't do those at EXP Realty at this point.
Yes, I do know that part.
Yeah.
A lot of brokerages say no to creative financing. Yes.
But
I do.
Seller financing is different.
Yes, seller financing, but subject to, I do know that there are a lot of brokerages out there that will not take subject to, it kind of has to be, I don't know if off the books or something where you guys aren't attached to it. We like to do, we still, I don't like doing stuff under the table, but I do know that my investor friend had that happen. I don't think it was EXP, but it was another brokerage. And what they did was the company invoiced the title company. So their brokerage wasn't on the name, that their name wasn't on all the documentation essentially. So there's a little bit way around it. So I don't know if you guys know Pace Morby. He's like the biggest creative finance subject to guy that I know. He's all over the internet. You can look him up. He has a huge YouTube website, a huge YouTube channel. His wife is part of EXP, and they have told her multiple times that she cannot do anything creative finance. They're trying to for EXP. They're trying to get it where you can do creative finance. I think it's because you guys have a lot of agents and there's a lot of liability for that. So that but they are, I know that they've been trying to do it for a long time with them.
What's his name? Pace Morby?
Yeah, PACEMORBY.
Exactly what I wrote down. Okay. I have to check him out. So as far as we find a house where they want to do seller financing, say their house is paid off and now they want to sell it, but they don't really need all that money right now because they're going to have capital gains tax and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So how do you approach them to talk to them about it? What's the best way to talk to them about it?
I always come from an education standpoint when I try talking to people. I'm a salesperson at the end of the day, and I like to put some education involved. So I'm kind of both. I always ask the questions, right? The person who asks the questions are the person who is in control of the conversation. So I typically ask them like, where do they plan on, if you were to sell this property, you make $250,000, where do you plan on taking, where is that money going afterwards? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I was just gonna, sit on it. A lot of the time I'm like, well, okay, if you do sell your property, you know that you're gonna take a 25% capital gains hit, but not only that, you're gonna take a recapture of depreciation hit, which is another 20%. So you're gonna pay 45% in right off the top. It's gonna come whoop, right off the top. So
Recapture of what?
recapture of depreciation. So in the US, you're allowed to write off your property for 27.5 years. Now, this is solely for an investment property we're talking about. This has nothing to do with a primary residence. Primary residence is different. You guys know the two out of the 5 years. That's completely different. I'm talking about an investment property. So in order for them to even qualify for a 1031 exchange, they have to have over a year in rental income. They have to file taxes on it. So I just try to educate them on kind of how the 1031 exchange looks, right? If in order to avoid the capital gains, the recapture of the depreciation, you can do a 1031 exchange, but there's rules and regulations, right? So you can't, you have to have over a year of rental income, and then you have to exchange like kind, right? That's, and it has to be, so if it's $250,000, you have to find a property that's over 250,000. It can be anything though. It could be a multifamily. It can be anything besides, anything over the amount that you are purchasing it from, selling it essentially. So, but then there's rules. What happens when you do a 1031 exchange? You have 45 days to find a new property. You have 180 days for it to close. So there's a time frame on it. So that is, so I try to educate them on kind of like what's going to happen in that scenario. And then I said, what if instead of you trying to find another property to put your money in, what if you become the bank on the property? You hold the note. I own the property. You don't have to deal with the tenants, toilets, termites, any of that. And I will pay you a monthly fee. And they're going to be like, I'm going to pay you the payment on it. And they're going to say, well, what happens if you stop paying? Well, it's the same thing. If you're a first position note holder, you have the right to foreclose on me, right? That's how it works. And then they're going to also say, they're going to want to be walked through the process a little bit of like exactly. And then they're going to say, okay, what are the terms, right? And I said, well, when I walk into Chase Bank, they typically tell me the terms of everything. So you set the terms, right? Now, once they set the terms, now I can kind of negotiate, but I don't want to try to give them the rabbit, if I don't know, they might come back and say 2% and, 0% down. I don't know, but I don't want to be the first one who talks is the first one that loses, right? So I want to make sure that I am having them. If I walk into a bank, they tell me the terms. I don't get to dictate the terms. They get to tell me the terms. So that's kind of how I go about the owner financing, because if they don't understand how capital gains works in the US, it's really, I hate to, the reason why we have 1031 exchanges is that's how the wealthy got wealthy, right? Is because they were able to use the 1031 exchange and defer the taxes. The moment that you pay taxes on it, you're just keep cutting your wealth, right? So to educate them on why we use 1031 exchanges, but then educating on them why it's better to become the bank. To be honest with you, I would prefer to hold the paper on all properties instead of owning the properties. I don't want to own the properties, to be honest with you. I want to become the bank. I want to become the note holder.
Yeah. Yeah, I learned about some of that creative financing stuff at Quest IRA when I first
Yes.
moved down, because all of
Okay.
that was very foreign to me. And I'm like, what? You can just be a note holder and you
Yes.
get paid on that without having to own the property? But I'm like, wow, I just never knew how all that worked.
But not only can you become a note holder, you can actually broker notes. If you're an agent, you can broker notes. And there's a lot of money in that. Maybe when you first get started, you can start brokering a couple notes to people and then maybe eventually do it yourself. That is a whole business in itself.
Yeah. You go to Quest?
I've heard the name. I've never really worked with them, or I was trying to go on some of their webinars, but the times didn't align with my schedule sometimes. But I do want to check them out with the self-directed IRAs. There's a lot of money in the private lending for self-directed IRAs. That's where $1 trillion lives, is the government tells you can't touch it until 65 or 60, whatever the age limit is, the age for you to touch it. But then if you have an IRA, you can self-direct it into a prohibited transaction, right? You can into a transaction that is prohibited, like making sure that I think I'm using that word wrong. It's not
prohibited.
It's not prohibited. There we go. I was like, that doesn't sound right. It's not prohibited, right? So making sure that you don't, a prohibited transaction, I don't know how much you guys know, but you can't put your self-directed IRA into your own properties, right? Because that is considered a prohibited transaction. You can put it into other people's properties, but you can't own the property.
So every Tuesday at Quest, I think it's at 6 p.m. I think they do it twice on Tuesdays, 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. You can go there or you can go online, and then people are pitching their deals that they have.
Really?
I'm looking for investor, and they tell you about the property and they give their information if you want more information on it. So yeah, I've gone there and I've invested with some people through Quest Trust.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I definitely need to look into that. I'll probably have you send me some stuff on when that webinar is.
And they have in-person events and things like that too. So I'd love to meet you.
Yeah, in Austin. Some of them are here in Houston, I think too, but a lot of them are in Austin.
The headquarters is here in Houston.
Oh, it is. Okay, cool. Yeah.
They just have different branches. I think they got it in Dallas and Austin now. But yeah, the main office is here in Houston on Park Row.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's definitely, you can always find private money lenders through self-directed IRAs. There's a lot of money in there. So.
Yeah, they got money, it's just sitting there making what, 8% or 6%, and
yeah,
you have the opportunity to make, double digits. They usually like 10% or above. And short term, you're only gonna do it for fix and flip, and you're not in there, using the hammer. You're just loaning the money out to this
right. Exactly. That's like the perfect scenario. Or I know that a lot of people invest it into like big corporations, funds and stuff like that.
You can invest in anything. There's one guy that invests in sperm, horse sperm.
Okay.
IRA.
That's not a prohibited transaction.
But you self-direct how you want it to go. Like when your money is in Fidelity, let's say, or Scott Trade, you can only invest in what they have
Yeah,
on their menu. And so with Quest, you can choose whatever menu you want.
yeah, you have more control over it. Yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing with self-directed IRAs is you're not with like a brokerage that's saying, hey, put it here. You can say, hey, I want to put it in this investment property because I know I'm going to make a greater return on it, on the money. Yeah. I just bought a self-directed IRA book. I'm always learning, always trying to, knowledge is key in this business because I think if you have one exit strategy, it's just not enough anymore. I think when I had my fix and flip go sideways on me, I realized I really needed to know more than just one exit strategy. And I saved the property by putting Airbnbs in it. And now I have 12 Airbnbs because that one thing, that beautiful disaster actually turned into a whole business in itself, and you just never know. And you have to pivot and think on your feet. I'm sure you guys know that as realtors and business owners. It's you know, you have to figure out there's more than one way to skin the cat. And how do you do it still legally? There's still ways to skin the cat. It's still legal and it's creative, and there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but it's how do you educate yourself to know what to do, because there is the wrong way to do it. And I'm sure you guys know real estate, they always say make sure that you understand it, because it's the things that you don't understand that will get you in trouble, right? So that's really making sure that you fully understand all of it. You read all the fine print to make sure you really truly understand it. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned in real estate is read the fine print is definitely one of the biggest things. As much as you don't like reading, maybe sit by the pool and make it a little bit more enjoyable, but you got to read the fine print on everything, unfortunately. So, do you guys have any questions?
When I'm talking to a seller and presenting seller financing, what would you say is probably like the top 2 or 3 incentives that I would want to mention to them to get them on board?
Number one is that the money part of it, right? The money, they're going to take a haircut. Number 2 is that they become the bank. They get to have a monthly payment that comes in every single month, right? Instead of them getting do they miss out on the large lump sum? Yeah, but they're getting that monthly payment on a monthly basis. And then also a third one would be that they don't have to deal with the tenants' toilets or termites. They don't have to deal with any of that. So that's kind of the top 3 that I would say that would entice me. I know a lot of people are like, well, what if it's only at a 5% interest rate? I'm like, you guys don't get greedy with it. People are so greedy right now with the interest rates for owner financing. It's so frustrating on my end. I'm like, I can go get hard money for the amount that you guys are telling me. 10%? Well, right now hard money is at like 13.5, but even at 10%, I used to get hard money for 10%. So it's kind of like just making them understand it, but also telling them exactly what is the benefit for them is definitely something that I think that's why they would bite on it.
We probably have to, do some script role playing and, kind of get all that embedded in our mind so that it flows out of our mouth.
Yeah, definitely. I do have a community. We actually, you guys know about it. We do meet almost every single day now on Zoom. Actually, we are, it's a little bit more controlled for us. So we started doing it on Zoom. We probably won't go back to where we were for a while because we have been on Zoom and people will make a phone call and we will then critique them. And I've had guys just in the last week went from so scared on the phone to now they're making phone calls like crazy. And we have a challenge Monday through Friday next week to call 100 leads a day. Whoever wins gets a prize. I don't know what the prize is. I'm trying to figure that out. They want a round trip ticket to Hawaii. And I'm like, no. If anything, I'm going to Hawaii, okay? But that's kind of where we're at right now with the community. They actually, we built a whole subject to calculator just now. I had somebody stay up until, I didn't ask him to, but he stayed up until 12:30 last night. I got a text at 12:30 a.m. saying, I'm done with the calculator, Claire.
Oh my goodness.
There's a subject to calculator, there's an owner financing calculator, and I would like to do a wrap calculator so you guys understand like all the numbers and everything. So
Hey, Claire, this is Anisha. How do we become part of that community?
you guys can just, I'll send you guys some more information. I send it through Vonda, and then we meet on a weekly basis, and it's free. Obviously, when you call the leads, you get a percentage of the wholesale fee when we go and sell it. So it's a 20%. So if it's $10,000, you'll get 20%, which is $2,000. But then you guys are able to go out and that's just for us to be able to train you guys and have incentivize. And then if you guys go out and do your own thing, I'm cool with that. You learn what you needed in the community and you go out. A lot of people stay because they just like the support. We're all in a group chat. We've been chatting since 7 o'clock in the morning today, even. They're just really wanting to learn. They're really wanting to go after it. You know, I used to charge people so much money, and I'm like, you know, I just really want to do this to have a deal flow come in, but also to be able to have you guys learn. And watching someone like David, somebody who, this guy is a complete introvert. He's a complete nerd on the computer. He's the one who did my calculator. He's like, I don't want to talk to anybody, and then for him to get on the phone on Thursday in front of everybody, he was the best one. And I was like, where have you been? What is going on? So to see him like light up, and he's like, it's fake confidence. I'm like, whatever you're doing, it's working. I don't care what it is, you know? But he understood how to, what to say, how to say it. And he really took the time. He was like, I've been watching a bunch of YouTube videos. I've been doing all of that. I've been just helping people. I've been trying to learn it. So he's like, as I'm doing because he helps me with all the leads. He puts the leads in all the folders for me so people can start calling. And then he's like, when I'm doing that, I'm listening to what people are saying on the phone. And it's the repetition of it. You know, you can hear me speak all day long, but it's the repetition of over and over. Okay, what are the 3 benefits for the seller financing? What is subject to? You kind of have to hear it over and over again, and then you will be able to explain it. So we get on the phone, and when someone says, hey, I don't know what subject to it, hey, can you explain subject to? A lot of the time they say, hey, let me have a team member come and explain it to you. And then that's where I step into it for the most part. But I would love to have more agents on the team, because the more agents that we have on the team, the more you guys will go out and educate all the other agents, because that's really the name of the game for me, because I think agents are a huge part in real estate. I don't want to shy away from agents just because they don't want to learn seller finance. If you guys are open to learning owner finance, subject to wraps, I want to help as much as I can, because the more I help you, the more you're going to go out and help other people.
And your seller financing terms are?
It depends on the deal. I like it to cash flow. So typically it's anywhere between 0 to 10% down. And I know that's like, why would someone do that? Because they don't want to pay capital gains. At that 10% down, they're going to pay capital gains on that. And then typically we like to do a 3, 4, 5% interest rate. But I would have to really run the numbers to see if that even works. I mean, and it depends on the purchase price, right? Because if they have I mean, I don't mind going a little higher on the purchase price if I can get my terms. Because all I care about is that payment. How much is that payment? So if I can make more than the payment, then I'm cool.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's wraps. There's a lot of different other strategies. There's something where how do you put a mortgage on the property and the seller pays the 30 to 20% down. So how do they carry the note on it? But we come in with the first position. They seller carry the second position. They carry the equity of it for 3, 5, 4, 5 years until we can go and refinance the property. So there's a lot of there's so many different strategies. There's not one way to skin the cat. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a hybrid of a couple things. Sometimes we'll get subject twos where there's too much equity in the property, and how does the seller hold the note for the equity until we can pay them off? So there's a lot of different ways. I don't want to confuse you guys because there's a lot to this. I've been doing this for a while, so it's kind of a lot at one time. Because, with you doing 1031, so I went to a 1031 exchange class. That's how I know so much about it. And I was trying to do it for a property, but my property didn't qualify for it because I didn't have rental income for a year. And it was an investment property. So all those fix and flippers, they pay, when you do fix and flip wholesaling, you're paying a high percentage in taxes. Unless you're writing it off somehow.
Mhm.
So that's kind of all. But if you guys want more information, I do have a Facebook group. And then we do Zoom calls. And I can send you guys that information.
Yeah,
Actually,
send it to me.
I'll send you.
Yeah, I would like it. Be part of Facebook group as well. I like lots of information. I can handle it all.
Nice. I love it. I know it can get overwhelming to someone who doesn't necessarily understand terminology. Here, I'll drop the link in the chat. There you go.
Facebook groups, join gratis community.
Yeah, so gratis means grateful. I believe in starting the day with gratitude. I've been through a lot. I'm sure a lot of you guys have too. And the more that I become grateful for everything, the more my world opens up to me. So I've always believed in being grateful for everything that you have. Even when it doesn't feel like it, let me tell you. Sometimes you're like, oh, but you got to be really grateful because a lot of people don't even have, they don't have the energy to get up in the day. They don't have their feet. They don't have eyeballs. There was a huge devastation in Maui. They're saying it's 50 people that died. It's really 1,000 people that are missing. I don't know if you guys know that. It happened overnight, and it's so, life is so precious. You want to go out and spend the time with the people that you love, and that's kind of what I always preach in my group as well. Is like, if there's drama, you'll be cut out so fast. I can't handle it. There's no, I don't have time for it, to be honest with you. But I try to really make sure that they understand how grateful this world is that we live in, and we're happy and we're healthy. And that is a huge mindset shift 3 years ago that I had. I kind of brainwashed myself to thinking every little thing, even if I was eating cereal, I'm like, I'm grateful for the cereal that I'm able to put I can afford cereal, even if I couldn't afford it. I'm grateful for the cereal that I'm able to have with the milk that I'm able, like, when you get so specific in the gratitude of everything, your world changes. It's impossible to be unhappy. Impossible. You can't even get mad anymore.
Right. That's kind of where I am. And people ask me, do you ever get mad? I'm like, why?
No. Everyone asks me that too. I'm like, no, never. They're like, oh, you're going to be one of those people that just blows up all of a sudden. I'm like, it will never happen. Because I am so freaking grateful that I can even get up and breathe every single day. Every single day.
Yeah, I read the book, The Miracle Morning, and that really changed my perspective
Mm,
on a lot of things.
I did that. That was hard for me at 5 o'clock. And then I actually naturally started doing that because I had so much work I had to do.
Yeah, yeah. It did change a lot of things for me. And now I wake up early naturally. And
Yeah.
before I was, trying to sleep in and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, let me get up and do what I gotta do. And now I don't even need an alarm clock to wake up.
Yeah, that's how I am. I don't I don't even set an alarm. I naturally wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock, sometimes 6. It depends, but it depends if the night before I had a lot going on too. So, but yeah, I
I
naturally
don't
wake
get
up.
up that early.
Oh,
Mine is
well,
naturally at 7, but
no, I usually well, 3 years ago, it was so chaotic in my world. I was really grinding and I would wake up at 3, 4 o'clock naturally every single morning because that 3, 4 hour window just it makes you light years ahead of everybody because the moment even 7 o'clock rolls around, I start getting text messages. I've been getting text messages since 7 o'clock this morning. I was telling Vonda, I was like, I've spoken to my contractor, I've spoken to my cleaner, I've spoken to my David, who's the behind the scenes guy. We're planning out an event already. Like I've spoken to everybody this morning. It was only 9 o'clock in the morning, but I've spoken to 2 contractors actually. And then my boyfriend who lives in Hawaii. So I've spoken to everybody. All my team is on board. So it's cool to have a vision and for people to buy into your vision and to be able to execute because I can't do it without my team. I tell them all the time, I cannot do what I do without a team. There's no freaking way because they are the backbone to this business. You can't do real estate without a team.
right.
It's hard.
That's kind of why we're meeting here on Saturdays, because we're all kind of independent. We're not really on a team, but
Yeah.
we kind of formed our own team where we can work together and talk about real estate and do things together. So
That's awesome because it feels like you're alone sometimes. And I know that feeling where you feel like you're going through the trenches by yourself. And I found that if I can build out a community and we all kind of go through the trenches together, I know that it will 10x everything. It will just grow exponentially because I've already met 2 private lenders. I've already have like people who are calling, deals coming in, and this is just like a month or 2 doing this. And when I did get started, I started with a community. I spent $20,000 in that community, but we met every single week, every week. And that's why I think I'm doing so well is because it was the consistency factor of it. So, but that's kind of, we talked about everything today. We talked about subject 2, we talked about mindset, we talked about community. I mean, hopefully you guys, if you guys want, we do Monday through Friday now. Next week is going to be really crazy because we're calling it the GOAT Call-a-thon, which is calling 100 leads a day. David set everybody up where there's a folder with their name on it and there's a list for them to call. And then they highlight no, yes, no, yes. And then at the end of it, who made the most phone calls, whoever makes the most phone calls wins. And I'm trying to ask them what they want. And I'm like, what do you guys want as a prize? And they really haven't really said anything. So I'm trying to figure that part out still, but that's kind of what
a spa day.
a spa day, that actually would be nice. Like a $100, $200 gift certificate to the spa that,
Yeah,
I know I
massage.
would like that. I like those Thai massages.
Yeah.
They just,
Spa world out here in Katy is awesome. We could spend 8-10 hours there.
oh yeah,
Mhm.
I could do that all day too. But my phone would ring. My boyfriend goes, we can go on vacation, but you better drop that phone in the water.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking this time out and talking to us. If anybody have any more questions for her? And
Thank you
hopefully
very
we'll get it
much.
into your group and we'll learn from you guys and participate and help our sellers out as well.
Yes, definitely. That's the name of the game, is to help everybody for sure. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Well, thank you. And I'll put your information in the notes for everybody in case they want to get in contact with you.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Awesome.
You guys
Thank
can
you,
stay
guys.
on if you want.
Sure, I can stay on.
Well, I was telling everybody else if they wanted to, they got to talk about. they can stay on. You can stay on too, but
I'm interested. I'll listen.
you guys have any real estate topics you want to talk about today? Anything come up? Teresa, you're looking for a optometrist who wants to work in the VA. How's that going?
Actually, what it is that it's the it's the ophthalmology. Well, I shouldn't say ophthalmology. It's just an eyeglass shop. And I also learned that it's 9 separate places that they need. It's like a company in Kentucky owns these 9 eyeglass shops here in the surrounding areas of Texas. And they're looking to have all of those. So they need, how I want to say is they need a company who owns at least 8 eyeglass places, 9 eyeglasses places, so that they can have those people replaced.
Wow.
So that has been a challenge. I'm trying to find out where could you locate someone who has an eyeglass shop, but is willing to, to get involved there with the government.
I have no experience with that at all. Only thing
It
I
is, yeah,
is a
because
business broker, but that's
it's very unique. I did reach out to, I can't remember who you told me, but I reached out to that guy, Kevin, and he was going to try to reach out to someone else about it, but it is definitely something that is quite unique.
well, I can stop the recording on this, I think.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure, and I'm still just trying to find out where,